Hi guys, welcome to this video on how to handle your data that you've collected during your behavioural observations. And this video is specifically really for those individuals who are interested in collecting behavioural rates. Okay, so this is the number of times a behaviour occurs within a specific time frame. And in order to conduct this, you would have had to conduct a certain type of behavioural sampling method. You probably would have used continuous sampling, so you know the exact time that you're observing the animal start and end, and then you would have used some sort of focal sampling, potentially if you were focusing on one individual and you counted all the times specific behaviour occurred during that time frame, or you might have recorded the specific behaviours that you observed occur in a whole group. Okay, doesn't really matter. The concept is the same. Okay, so this is how we might want to set our data up. So first of all, we just have to think about what we put in our columns and what we put in our rows. So just as a general rule, remember that columns represent variables. Okay, so date, sample, treatment, start, end, focal, total time, behavioral count, rate, and our rows represent our individual data points. Okay, so these are going to represent our data points for each behavior that we collect. All right, so let's say, for example, that we were interested in observing an animal performing continuous focal sampling, and we were interested in looking at how many times it performed certain behaviors within a specific time frame. Okay, let's say we were interested in three different types of behavior. Okay. This is how we might want to set this out. So you're going to have your data collection sheet that you've had in the field, but what you want to do is probably tally up all of the behaviours or not first before you input it in here. All right, so we always have the date. Okay, so let's say we collected it today, so the 20th of the 12th, 19. Okay, I'm going to call this sample BS1, so before sample 1, and I'm going to put before in the treatment. Let's say that we were interested in looking at the behaviour before some sort of treatment like husbandry, and then after. Okay, I'm going to say I started my focal at 9 o'clock. Okay, remember you need the exact times that you start the focal and end the focal in here, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to say I ended the focal, let's say 9:28, because they started performing some sort of husbandry technique which interrupted their behaviour too much, and I decided to cancel it there and then. Okay, so that gives you my kind of core data. Okay, and then what I'll do before I input the data into here is on my data collection sheet that I had out in the field is tally up the total numbers of behaviours. I've just noticed there's one more behaviour column that I need to have in here. Okay, so this needs to be behaviour. Okay, so let's call our behaviours that we're interested in A, B, and C. So this will be behaviour A. After tallying up the amount of times that I saw behaviour A during this observation, I found that they performed it 34 times. Okay, so that's my kind of core data. All right, this is what I've collected in the field. I've done 28 minutes of data collection, and I've collected 34 counts of behaviour A. All right, we can then actually copy these data here and just paste it below, and then we obviously observe behaviour B as well. And after tallying that up on my data collection sheet, I saw that behaviour B actually occurred 54 times. And then finally, let's just copy this again. Behaviour C, I tallied that up, and that only occurred 12 times. Okay, so now I've kind of got this core data in there. I can then do the next calculation to see what the rate of behaviour that occurred was in the given time frame that I observed the animals for. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is calculate total time. I mean, I know it's kind of 28 minutes here, all right, but it might not be as easy as looking at that. So I'm going to show you how to calculate that from the data we've actually got here. All right, it's quite a useful function to know how to do. Okay, so it's quite simple. first thing you have to make sure is when you input your data into Excel, you input times into Excel, you do it using the 24-hour clock. That's really important, okay? And then what we do is we put an equals in to our total time cell. Remember, we start any function with an equals. And then I basically want to take this time, D2, away from this time, E2. Okay, so I literally click on the cell E2, hit minus, and then click on the cell D2. Okay, and that tells me that I've got 28 minutes of time. Now, unfortunately, because of the way Excel works, it doesn't actually recognize this as an actual time in minutes when I try to do a function of it to calculate my rate. I'll show you why, or I'll show you an example of that. So rate is basically, very simply, count divided by time. All right, and that'll give us how many times a certain behavior occurs within a given time frame. If we're looking at it in minutes, it'll be per minute. If we're looking at it in hours, it'll be per hour. All right, so it's basically how many times a behavior occurred per specified time frame. So we're interested in that time frame in minutes. So basically, very simple function. We start it again with an equals. We click on the cell for count, hit divide, and then click on the cell for time, and then hit enter. All right. As you can see, it doesn't like that at all. It's giving it us as a time. All right. So we need to do something with this cell over here, this total time cell. We need to do something to the function, to the calculation. All right. So if we go up to our little window up here, our little formula bar, first of all, we need to put some brackets around this equation here. All right. So whenever we put brackets around an equation, basically what Excel is going to do is going to do that before it does anything else we ask it to do. So we want it to take away this D2 from E2. Cool, it's going to do that. Then what we need to do is times that by 1,440. Okay, the reason it's 1,440 is because that's how many minutes there are in a day. All right, and because this is in a 24-hour clock, we basically need to times that by the number of minutes in that 24-hour clock, and that will give us the actual number of minutes, the absolute number of minutes of our observation time, rather than giving it to us in a 24-hour clock format. So then hit enter. All right, we want to do one more thing. All right, it's still in that clock format. We click on that cell with the clock format. Let me do that. Okay, and then if we go up to the top here, we can select the cell format. Okay, so at the moment it's in custom. And what we want to do is change that to general. And as we can see, it's then given it to us in absolute minutes rather than 24-hour clock. Okay, so then technically speaking, if we do this equation again, so equals behavioral count divided by total time. I know why. We also need to change this one as well. So this is also still remaining in that 24-hour clock cell function. So if we go up to format cells again and change that from custom to general, that will then give us that as a rate. So basically what we've got here is we know that behavior A during this observation period was performed 1.21 times per minute. All right, and then basically what we can do once we've got that first row done is we can just highlight this cell, go to the bottom right hand corner where we see a square appear, left click, and then just drag that down for the other remaining rows, and it will copy that formula for us. What we'll also need to do obviously is do the same for this. Okay, there we go. There we have it. Okay, so we've got our rates for each of these behaviors as behavior per minute. Okay, what's sometimes useful to do is just put here minute, so we know that we're interested in minutes, just to remind us. And that's it. Okay, so that's one sample. All right, obviously we'll need to do that for several samples. And then what we can do is then we can start to build a picture, summarize how much each behavior occurs before and after a certain treatment that we do. Okay. So if you start to do that then for all of your samples that you've got, okay, and then if you go to the next video, I'll show you then how to actually summarize this data ready for analysis.